Chapter 2: How Thoughts Become Things. When it comes to manifesting or trying to understand why something is manifesting, it helps to understand how you create the physical materiality in your life to begin with. We want to answer questions like which thoughts become things and how is reality created? Related to those is the question of how is time and space itself created? First of all, you are infinite, eternal, and multidimensional beings. This means, in the truest sense of the word eternal, that you have no beginning, no middle, and no ending. Take a moment to grasp that concept. You create physical reality with others. In the overall sense of your being, however, within that infinity, within that totality, you express your beingness in many ways. One of those ways, just one, is in this particular reality that you call the physical reality. Within physical reality, there is the idea of unfoldment. This means that there is a before, during, and after. When you manifest physically in this reality, you intentionally forget that you know it all. You forget that you are infinite and eternal. You then, little by little, remember who you are. In addition, in a very general sense, you have agreed with the other individuals so that your reality can be synchronized between each other in terms of it unfolding at a certain rate. Each person creates their reality 100% completely, and in order to co-create together, they are synchronized. While it seems impossible that each person could create their own reality and simultaneously share a reality, it is true. That is a paradox. Time is societal and individual. You create time, however, you as a society agree to be synchronized in a time stream. This allows you to have minor individual variations in how you create time and yet experience time in a similar fashion. When you create time, you do it in a way that is synchronized to some extent with others. Often, even during your day-to-day reality, you may create time in a slightly different flow in comparison to everyone else. Perhaps less of it, which you then perceive as time flies by, or perhaps more of it, which you perceive as time is dragging along. But it is your creation, and there is a standardization to some degree between all individuals within a given mass consciousness in a society. Our time is different from your time. To understand better how time is created and synchronized, you can compare the way you create time to the way we create time. Our particular society is also, to some degree, synchronized to itself in that we still, to some degree, create time. Our relationship and experience of that time is far different. However, we still create it, and there still is a rate and a flow at which we synchronize with each other for some degree of a common experience. We exist in a different dimension of experience, and this is why you would not at this time physically perceive our star without a few adjustments in that dimension. There are some unique things about the nature of that difference in dimensionality. Although this, to some degree, will have particular extensions into our physicality, which we will not discuss at this time, one of the most obvious differences is that we exist in a different dimension that is not synchronized to yours. We cannot physically perceive each other without adjustments. This is due to the fact that our particular stream of time in reference and comparison to your own is approximately, and this is, again, quite arbitrary, quite approximate, but 10 times faster than your own. Therefore, what you perceive to be, for example, 30 years of time would translate into our history as approximately 300 years of time. Time must be synchronized to interact. Without synchronization, there simply would be no sense to be made from one dimension of experience to another. When we interact with you, we do so from our particular relative stream of time. It may seem to us that simply days have passed, but it is synchronized when we interact with you into your time stream, so that it makes some type of sense to you, and so that it seems to have some continuity from one interaction to another. It is not necessarily the one-to-one relationship that you might imagine. For instance, you might perceive many times that we have had 4 or 5 particular discrete interactions, but from my end, we may perceive them as one interaction. There will not always be a one-to-one correspondence. We can, however, tap into where and when our communications are coming through to you and make some kind of a logistical sense to it in your terms of before, during, and after other sessions. Again, even this is quite an arbitrary creation. How time is created. To get back to the idea of how thoughts become things, and therefore how time and space are created, we will use the following analogy. You have a theory that you call the Big Bang. What this represents, from our perspective, is the intersection of consciousness itself, which is transcendental, with physical reality. Realize that physical reality is basically a physicalized representation of what you believe. That intersection, the point at which physical reality meets consciousness, creates a spark. Initially, that spark will be perceived in a particular given space of physical reality as initially nothing and then something, but one something. Now again, this is all quite colloquial and is more for the purpose of analogy than direct, precise information, but simply follow along and you will understand the analogy. First of all, allow us to extend the definition that your society and even your physicists have, that is, that space and time, formerly believed to be two discrete ideas, are simply two sides of the same coin. Even in your science, it is now labeled space-time rather than simply each individual component. Understand that this makes sense. With the creation of space, then comes the necessity of time to travel across it and to be able to make some sense out of it. This is one of the presentations that time itself will represent. So, following on the analogy of a singular point, at that singular point, at the time of its manifestation, there is no time. There is simply one point. There is no space to cover, nowhere to go, and nothing to do. There is no need for the creation of time to do it in. But when that one point, as an analogy, explodes out to many billions and billions of separate ideas, radiating out 360 degrees in all directions, you then, from that centerness and that singular point, create between that singular point and that point of dispersion space from a point to another point. As you create more space, you simultaneously also create time in which to traverse the space itself. In other words, reality is a physicalized representation of your ideas. It's sort of like walking around inside your mind, except that physical reality is only a reflection of your beliefs, rather than all the things you think. While you may seem to exist within the universe actually exists within you. Obviously, if everything is all one idea, there is no necessity for time, but the moment there is a single separation, the moment there is a single divergence from a single point, there is then the necessity of time. We hope this is clear so far. If it is not, please take a moment to take it all in before proceeding. We know these concepts are new and very different from your previous understandings. You create time and space. As you separate from the one in the aforementioned analogy, you create more space, you create more time, and you also then, by definition, create more separation. Allow us to bring this analogy home. This may sound abstract, but it will directly relate to your life and to your personal experience. Using the aforementioned analogy of the Big Bang, when you contract the points back to the center, you then correspondingly create less space between the points and therefore less time necessary to extend to each point. In this reality, you are exploring separation and limitation, and therefore you create more space. Space itself is a symbol of the fragmentation within you. In this physical world, each thing is actually a symbolic representation of something in your consciousness. Each thing is something you wish to explore. Separation is represented by the space between things. This gives you the experience that you did not create the reality and that it is separate from you. This gives you the experience that there is some power greater than you out there. The more you distance yourself from the person you choose to be, the more physical space and time you will create. When you do that, you also need and automatically create more time. This means the physical things you desire will be kept apart from you in both time and space. They will not manifest in your experience. You will always have, colloquially speaking, enough time to explore each and every minute corner of each and every minute separation that you have created. As you integrate, time contracts. This also works in the inverse way or the opposite way as well. You create your reality 100%. 100%. What that 100% means is that everything in that reality, 100% of everything fits. 100% of everything is your creation. When you act on this knowledge and accept that you created it all and see why, you integrate them one at a time. This results in things manifesting more easily. In the integration, it is as if the many points are contracting back to the center point. The more you accept that you created your reality, the more you can then see how everything was created by you to serve you in a positive way. You will then allow the reality to deliver to you the messages it is trying to deliver. When you do this, you need less time. Repack your extra baggage. When you realize that these creations were made by you, perhaps from unconscious beliefs in your past, before you knew you had a choice, before you knew you could consciously choose your beliefs, you may find you have some extra baggage to incorporate. It seems like extra baggage, but the idea is that it's not. It is part of who you are. You can open those suitcases and repack the contents within you. This means you can look at the things you denied that you created and see how you did create them to serve you and then integrate them back into the whole. Therefore, the more you view things as not being a part of you, the more you create an attitude of separation, and that creates the physical experience of things being held apart from you. In other words, manifestations are slower. On the other hand, if you have the attitude that you created it all, it belongs to you, and you see how each thing serves you, you then have the attitude of integration. This allows things to physically come back to the center, and physical space and time contracts. This means things manifest faster. Ownership changes time. When you realize and accept that you created everything, whether you like it or not, and then you use those things in a positive way, that is integration. That is owning your reality. You can use the things you don't like to help you nail down the foundational primary beliefs that still limit you. Once you do that, you can accept them and appreciate what they have allowed you to do, and then you can decide what new beliefs you prefer. When you act on those new beliefs, you make it official that you own your reality, and then you integrate the space in the totality of your consciousness that then necessitates time to experience them. In short, you improve your manifestations. When you own your reality and realize that you created it, you become grateful for the things you used to label as bad. You realize that those things actually contain the jewels of positivity and self-reflection that allowed you to live a better life. When that happens, you literally change the rate of time relative to society as a whole. Sometimes you simply perceive that time is flying by quite quickly. Aging. When you say time has flown by and I had a good time, it is not truly that time has passed any faster. When you have a good time, you are being fully who you are and expressing less separation. You are not focused on denying your reality and pushing it away. In that integrated state of awareness, you literally create less time. So, if 1 or 2 hours has passed by your mass consciousness clock time, and you have seemed to experience only 20 or 25 minutes, your body and your consciousness, so to speak, mentally have only aged 20 or 25 minutes. Increasing your age. Obviously, you can see that this would have far-reaching effects on your physical body itself. This is why lifespans are increasing, and it is the result of more often honoring and validating who you are. You do this and can increase it by granting validity to the things with integrity that move you, give you passion, and excite you. Those things represent who you are. They represent you acting as an integrated whole rather than separate parts. When you accept rather than fight reality, you allow yourself to collect each and every part back together. This can take a long time, but don't worry, you will make all the time you need to do so. What we are saying is that if you wish to experience and create time at a flow that represents your integration, your lifespan will increase. Even if you define that your physical lifespan is 100 years, from our particular understanding of your physiognomy, that is only 1/3 of your potential. You can live 300 years. The fact that you reach only 1/3 of that is a direct result of your style of creation of time. Denial shortens your life. If you spend the majority of that 1/3 of the time in misery by denying that you created it all, you create 200 to 300 years worth of the passage of time. But because that is not synchronized to your particular society, you seem to only have lived 100 years, or perhaps quite a bit less in some instances. That is all there is to it. Stop denying your creations as, "Why is this happening to me? Poor me, what will I do? What did I ever do to deserve this miserable thing?" That is a perspective, that is an approach, and that is an attitude. We are making light of your approach in order to allow you to enjoy what we are saying. Understand that we are not criticizing it when we do so, but simply, sometimes, members of your society seem to appreciate hearing how it sounds from a third person's point of view. We are not making fun of you, and we are not saying that what you are doing is any worse, qualitatively, than what we are suggesting, but having some fun in the course of communicating with you. When you deny your reality, you remove your ability to use it. If you deny it, Why is this happening to me? You are not looking at it as your creation, and then cannot treat it and transform it as your creation. You approach it as an external idea. This slows down your life and manifestations. Own your creations. Start by saying, well, all right. Here is the creation that I have created, but it is not one that I prefer, so therefore I am not looking at it as my creation. If I simply assume that because I created it all, this is not an exception, and if I assume that this is my creation, I understand that anything I create, no matter how it looks, contains both potentials for positive and negative manifestation. Therefore, since I know I created it, and I know on some level, as I create levels, what I am doing, I will simply approach it from the perspective, how does it serve me exactly the way that it is? Not if it was this or if it was that, but exactly the way it is. When you do that and shift your perspective, even just one minute bit to this particular perspective, you then give yourself one of the only chances you will have to integrate it rather than deny it. Denial is continued separation and physically results in things being kept from you. Denial is the pushing or partitioning of parts within you. On the other hand, when you acknowledge that you created it all, that is integration itself. It is the glue of unconditional love within you that allows you to collect back what you have formerly labeled separations within you. It allows you to recollect yourself into a discrete, singular being with a singular, integrated presentation and experience. The things you prefer come into your experience more easily. Recollection. Therefore, what we are sharing with you as the recollection is on the one hand the recollection of this information that we are sharing, which you already know on some level or you simply wouldn't understand a word that I'm saying, but it is also the literal recollection of what you have denied within you. Open your subconscious closet. Sometimes people talk about a subconscious closet. They don't mean the subconscious portion of your consciousness that allows for the automatic pilot of your body and so forth, but the closet that you stuff things into, so to speak. What allows the stuffing and feeling of this closet is denial itself. When you deny something, you may think it would go away. It doesn't. When you deny something, it does not go away because you are all of creation. There is nowhere to hide it. There is nowhere to put it. There is no outside. To try to hide it, you tuck it, colloquially speaking, into a closet you call the subconscious, or perhaps a dungeon. Fortunately, you can smash the lock from that dungeon. You can thrust open the dungeon door at any time, acknowledge your creations, but not from the perspective of, why me, but from the perspective of, all right, I now understand that this is a creation that resulted from an unconscious belief that I no longer prefer, but I wish to acknowledge it. I wish to see what the belief is because I know I cannot change it unless I first see it, unless I first own it. When you call forth the members of the dungeon by being honest with yourself about what you believe, you allow things to come to the surface. Once you do that, you can then reinterpret them in an integrative way. Your physical reality will then change to reflect that. You can start slowly. Perhaps at first, this may seem a little overwhelming. You may not be ready to open the door all the way. Feel free, if you wish, to use the analogy of a door to simply crack it, and at least allow things a bit at a time to seep out. If you deny those things, don't worry, they will be put back into the closet and you will get a chance to look at them later. But if you acknowledge them, you will slowly empty out the closet and perhaps eventually shut it down. It is all up to you. The creations you stuff back into the closet, however, have a particular tendency to be disturbing. That's because the harder and farther you push them into the closet, the louder they will knock, the more they will rattle their chains, the more they will bang on the walls, and the more you will be aware of them. This is because ultimately they are your creations. They are part of you. They are aspects of yourself you are refusing to be honest about. You cannot truly deny anything about yourself. Negative beliefs are your children. If you can invite them, one by one, as your children, rather than your prisoners, you can then see why you created these children, how they serve you, and what it is they allow you to discover more about yourself. You will see how you can use them to transform yourself in a positive way. We remind you there is absolutely nothing, unless your definition says that there is, There is absolutely nothing that you can find out about yourself, no matter how awful, that you cannot use in a positive way. If you are willing to approach it from that perspective, you can use it in a positive way. There is no need to fear anything in the closet. All ideas can be positive. We understand that owning your reality and facing it can be frightening. However, we are offering you a different perspective. Owning your reality is what allows the symbols to deliver their messages so that you can use them in a positive way. The negative aspects are messages that you are refusing to receive. When you instead call forth an idea from your subconscious closet, acknowledge it, appreciate it. It may be outdated, it may be obsolete, but appreciate that it has led you to this point and choose anew, with eyes open, having equalized it. It does not go back into the closet. Then it integrates into your totality. It becomes a part of you that is no better or no worse. It has no less or more weight than anything else. But because you are choosing a positive perspective, the negative aspects of it will simply be irrelevant. Remember, you contain it all. Often people feel that the way to move forward is to deny the negative beliefs and thereby eliminate them. You have created a reality that contains positive and negative. You contain both. It is not a matter of ever escaping the negative. It is part of you. The negative will always be there. It is a polarized expression of the reality itself. If you want to move forward, acknowledge and allow the negative to exist, but make your intention be to see and choose the positive perspective. The negative then becomes irrelevant to the experience of your life. You will still be aware of it, but you will no longer experience one drop of the negative from it. You will continue to be aware of negativity because your world contains negativity, but this will only be in the others in your reality. In other words, you may be more aware of negative things happening to other individuals. From your perspective, you will understand that this is not something negative that is happening to them. They are interpreting it as negative, denying it, and therefore creating the negative experience. Therefore, you might still perceive negativity, but not experience it at all. Thoughts you act on. Often people discuss how thoughts create things, but it is not thoughts in and of themselves that create things. It is the action you take based upon those thoughts. You can think anything you wish. When you think of something positive, you don't create a positive reality. When you think of something negative, you don't create a negative reality. Thinking is simply the library. You can read any book you wish, scary, happy, angry, sad, miserable, or ecstatic. You can read them all. But the ones you check out by acting on them are the ones that are your life. It is the actions you take in the books, to continue the analogy, that you have read as a manual for those actions which determine the reality. If you do not act with the negative perspective, you can never, did he just say never? I think he did. Never get a negative experience. Only can you experience a negative experience if you first interpret it that way, assign that meaning, and then act with that interpretation and negative attitude. Then yes, you may experience things that you find very easy to label negative. But it also works the other way around. If you label things in a positive way, all your creations, you can also change the rate and flow of time. You can have more preferred manifestations. Therefore, it's about time that you perhaps begin to look and invite and embrace anything that you have denied. All these things are ideas or symbols within you, none of which can destroy you, none of which can have any negative effect on you, no matter how overwhelmingly negative they may seem, if you simply choose to assume and maintain the positive perspective. You created it all. The sooner you can accept this, the sooner you can transform your experience. When you're struggling, as you apply what we discuss and decide to create a positive life, you may find that you are still functioning from the seemingly old negative perspective. First of all, that's all right. You're simply having an attitude. You're simply having an interpretation. If you stop at that point and do not act, you can mull things over as long as you wish. If this happens, our suggestion is that you pause before you act. Roll this around as much as you want. You can cry, you can be miserable, you can fully explore the negative perspective of, this is happening to me. However, before you act, provide one positive alternative. Use your imagination to find better ways to act. Your imagination is a specifically aligned tool just for you that you can never lose. Imagine the preferred you, state the belief of that preferred you, feel how it feels. This is not the negative old you, but the new preferred you. When you feel that negative feeling, then, in your imagination, hand the situation over to the new preferred you. See how that new preferred you handles it. See what they do. See how they act. Then you have two choices: the automatic negative choice, but also, now having emotionally reattached and resummoned up your referential preferential you, two sets of actions. We suggest that if you lie both sets of these actions down on the table, you will, every time, have no difficulty in choosing the actions of the preferred you. It will be so obvious that those actions are more representative of who you choose to be. You get to be who you choose to be, if you say so. When an old tendency seems to come along, rather than saying, "There I go again, oh, I have failed, all my metaphysical training down the drain," you can simply substitute these two words: so what? So what? Here's one idea. It is not an idea that I prefer, therefore I need not judge myself for having come up with it. Presenting as many options as I will gives me that many more choices. So what? I thought that, big deal. Now I will summon the referential preferential me. I will now see how that me would act. I will lay them side by side. If the miserable alternative looks more appealing, I can still do it. I haven't lost it. But now I will be acting as a creator and have used the fact that I have that tendency to my advantage. When we say use your creations, we mean all of them. This even includes self-invalidation and judgment. Those paralyze you and nip your ability in the bud, so to speak, to do anything about it. Instead of saying, "Oh, dumb me," say, "So what? Is this what I intend to do? Is this representative of who I am now?" No. It will be obvious to you that this has been of service to you. It will remind you in no uncertain terms of who you prefer to be, perhaps by giving you an example of who you do not prefer to be. That is one way to do it, and you can use that as well. Denial creates space and time. As you start to pay attention and allow yourself to be honest about the many ways in which you have denied your reality, and therefore created separations and kept things from yourself, have a good time. You can literally start right now to have a good time. When you assume that you must do this, this, and that before you will be where you wish to be and have life going the way you want, you create time and distance between you and the things you desire. This is because basically what you are saying is that right here and right now is not the most perfect place and time, and therefore, physical reality reflects that. You can simply be that right now, one unit, no space, and therefore, there is not the necessity for time. You can decide that right here and right now is the most perfect place. When you exist right now, and never was there a moment in your life when you would not or could not say, "It is right now." That one moment is the spark itself. When you think about the past from the present, you create separation. The further back that separation is in your estimation, the more time you need to create in order to walk all those steps. The present doesn't need to be a result of the past. The past is recreated in the present each time you think about it. The moment you let go of the past, you let go of where you will be, which is not where you are, then changing your perception of time. That is because these things create separations from being right here and right now and create space and time. Ultimately, this separation reflects in a physical world in which things are kept from you. Decide to be right here, right now. All you need to do is to decide, right now I am who I prefer to be, right now. From this point forward, when something comes up that seems to be a representation of an older, unpreferred version of you, look at some of the things that we have shared. You will find that it will come in handy, and from this moment forward on, become who you wish to be. Simply decide. Be who you wish to be right now, which is the only time there is. When you decide that you are not who you wish to be, your physical reality reflects that and appears imperfect. You create symbols as an excuse. This is the transformational age, and many individuals will begin to see their power, will begin to understand that they function from the moment. And because they do not understand this consciously, they will force themselves to let go of the past. As an example, let's suppose that you have a severe weather storm. Afterwards, while there was some destruction, few people were injured or killed. In the rubble of what has occurred, they might have lost personal items, such as mementos and nostalgic material. These personal items are the museums of the lives of those individuals who gave them very strong identifications with their past. Many individuals, simultaneously, thousands in fact, have unconsciously chosen to force themselves through these types of symbols to literally obliterate their past. Although from the general perspective of your society it may seem like a bummer, it will have the overall effect of allowing these individuals to start over. Letting go of these past ideas, which literally bind you, is very liberating. As you let go of the past by understanding that your past has been a recreation from the present of that past, and not even generally a precise recreation, by the way, you give yourself the opportunity to be right here, right now, with no distractions and no self-imposed separations. Physical reality will ultimately reflect this. If, from this point forward, which is the only point there is, you consciously let go of the past as an excuse, you will then not need to force yourself through a symbol to do so. If you do this, and many of you have, we are not taking away from that, but if you continue to do so, you will then not need the symbol to force it on yourself. When you understand that physical reality is a symbolic representation of what you believe, you can simply get down to it without needing to create the symbol to force you to do so. Denial and disease. This is true with everything in your closet. The loudest knocking comes from the things that you deny the most, and they build up enough momentum to force their way to your conscious awareness. If you really deny something, you cut yourself off from yourself. You are denying yourself. This manifests in what you call dis-ease. Dis-ease is a symbol which forces you to look at a certain idea or you die. You can choose to look at the idea in lieu of dying. The more you acknowledge what you believe, the less of a tendency you will have to create disease. All disease is the result of not being an aligned whole being. Living in joy. Needless to say, when you chop up portions of your conscious awareness and tuck them into different compartments, this is not integrated. It's up to you. It always will be. Recollect this material and yourself out of choice and reference because you say so, because you know you can only grow and learn, and because you know when that closet is empty, you will be living in ecstatic joy. We assume that this is attractive to you, and so we share it as an option. We never insist that what we are saying is better than what you are doing. But if you choose to find that you are in synchronous alignment with what we are sharing, please take it. Please use it. It is an option and will have the effect that we are sharing should you choose to do it, and it's up to you. Conclusion. We thank you for opening the many doors that you create between the sections of your consciousness and within your reality. We thank you for your willingness to interact with us as equals. That equalization is all that is necessary to gather and recollect yourself. We thank you for understanding that the concepts that you have denied are equal to all other concepts, and then it becomes a matter of preference. Do I prefer it? And not a matter of, this is better than that, and everyone knows that. That is separation and judgment. The unequal assignment of weight is separation. You integrate and manifest a preferable reality when you validate the world, see everything as equally valid, and acknowledge it. You can decide that you prefer something, but not by invalidating the symbols you do not. Life happens through you, not to you.